Hello everyone. We will begin with a new chapter, Weathering, chapter 10 from your textbook. The goal for today's lesson is to understand what is weathering. We'll try to understand the different effects of weathering, and then, if time permits, we will do one type of weathering, that is a physical or mechanical weathering. So let us begin. Now, what is weathering? So please underline. Weathering is related to the disintegration of rocks and minerals. So, disintegration meaning breaking down. So, the process of breaking down of rocks and minerals is known as your weathering. Weathering could be physical weathering, weathering could be chemical weathering. So, physical and chemical weathering are the two main types of weathering. But there's a third type as well, that is the biological weathering, which is the breaking down of rocks by plants or animals. Alright, so that is weathering. It's a process of disintegration and decomposition of rocks. If you look into this picture, this is a rock, and when weathering operates on the rock can form soil. So when rock breaks down, it can convert into soil. Weathering could be because of physical action, or sometimes it could be also be because of the chemical action, all right, or sometimes both. So let's learn about the different process connected with weathering. Now, weathering is a very important process of disintegration. Now, you have to be very comfortable with this word disintegration, meaning breakdown of rocks through physical action and decomposition through chemical action. Like I said, physical and chemical are the two main types of weathering. So, weathering is mostly associated because of the breaking down of rocks due to physical or chemical action. Now, it is a part, so weathering is a part of a denudational process which operates on the Earth's surface. Now, what do you mean by denudation? The removal of the material from the Earth's surface by various processes is collectively termed as denudation. So, what is denudation? Denudation is the removal of material from the Earth's surface due to various processes, like weathering is one process of denudation, mass wasting, or erosion. So when these process operates and removes material from the earth's surface, they as a whole is known as denudation. So denudation means removal of material from the earth's surface because of various processes like weathering, mass wasting, and erosion. So these are the three important processes associated with denudation. Okay, so let's learn about each. The first is weathering. So, weathering is the first important process of denudation. So, it's the disintegration and decomposition, meaning decay of rocks. So, breaking down and decay of rocks in situ, meaning in their own place. In situ is important keyword. In their own place or where the rocks are situated. So, when rocks break down in the original place, no, without any movement, that is what is known as weathering. That's why it's a local process where the weathered, means the broken down material, remains at the place of weathering. Like this picture here, the first step is weathering. So rocks are just broken down and they have not moved. If you look here, this is a rock. The rocks are broken down in the original place. There's no movement of this rock. So that is what is known as weathering. Is the disintegration of rocks in their own place of origin or in situ. Second is a mass wasting. It's the downward movement of the weathered material due to gravitational force. Hence, only physical movement or transportation of weathered material is involved in mass wasting. So now, second step is a mass wasting. So mass wasting, it does in this process there's no breaking down of rocks, but what happens? The broken rocks is just carried down under the force of gravity, and they move down because of this. And this process of moving down of rocks, the broken rocks, is known as mass wasting. So in mass wasting, there is no breaking down, but they just move the weathered or the broken down material down due to the gravitational force. And the third type of process of denudation is erosion. In erosion, the weathered material, meaning the broken down material brought by mass wasting, is carried by various erosion agents such as wind, river, etc. So this mass wasting is carried by erosion. Different agents of erosion like wind, water, they carry this material, and this material is again broken down into fine particles during the process of transportation and are deposited at some other location or sometimes on the seabed. So in erosion, what happens? This material that was dropped down by mass wasting is carried by erosion. Agents of erosion like wind, they carry it and they break it them into some more into fine particles. They convert them into fine, and they deposit these particles somewhere along, sometimes in the bottom of the sea or somewhere far from their original place. So that is the third process of denudation. So weathering, the first step of denudation is only breaking down, only disintegration. Mass wasting is only transportation of the broken material, whereas erosion is breaking down into fine particles plus transporting them to some other place. So these three processes together leads to the process of denudation. Now, what are the different effects of weathering? So that was about weathering and denudation and the different process of denudation. Now we learn about the effects of weathering. All right. Now, before we move into effects, I hope you all are clear with what is weathering. Weathering is a very static process. There is no involvement of the movement of any weathered material by any agent. Mass wasting is a spontaneous movement of rock or soil under the force of gravity, whereas third, erosion is a very dynamic process as weathered material is physically removed from the particular place and they're broken down into fine particles. Okay. Now, moving to the effects of weathering, effects could be a positive, effects could be negative. So, let's learn about how weathering affects. So, the first effect of weathering is a very positive effect of weathering, important process in the formation of soil. Because when rocks break down, they form soil. So, because of weathering, rocks can be converted into soil. So, weathering helps us in the formation of soil. And one example is a rigger soil, which is a black soil which is formed because of the broken breaking down of which rock? Basalt rock. So, when basalt rock breaks down, they form black soil. So, that's the first positive impact of weathering, that is, weathering helps in the formation of soil. Second, weathering plays an important role in the modification of landscape. Sometimes imagine an area with covered with huge rocks or any kind of different, and when weathering, when the breaking down of rocks or minerals takes place, what happens? The entire scene or the landscape of the area changes, isn't it? When rock starts breaking down and the place completely looks different. So weathering could be a good benefit. Sometimes a place could just look different because of this process, and it's an important role in the process of rock cycle. If you remember, when we learned about rock cycle, we learned that how because of weathering, igneous rock gets broken down because of weathering, and then they convert into sedimentary. Again, sedimentary rocks break down, they convert into metamorphic. So weathering plays a very important role in the modification of landscape and even in the process of rock cycle. So this is again your positive impact. And the third impact of weathering, which is a negative, is something to do with the biological weathering, that is the plants. So how does it affect? When the plants grow on buildings of dams, wall, bridges, they're very dangerous. I'm sure you've often seen plants growing along the bridge, or sometimes with on the dam or buildings. That is very dangerous. Now, why is it dangerous? Because the roots of the plants penetrate deep into the joint and crack, and as plant starts growing, what happens? The roots become more thick and they grow in size, and eventually these roots force to break the stone and tear them apart to damage the structure, like this bridge. If we see, the roots of the trees are penetrated inside the bridge. Now, as these roots would grow in size, they can develop a crack in the bridge and ultimately damage the structure. So this becomes a negative impact of weathering, especially to with biological, how roots can develop crack and then damage the structure. So that is about weathering, denudation, the different process of denudation and the effects of weathering. Thank you.